Hey, what's up? I'm Vid, and today I'm going to be drawing Rita Repulsa from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. If you couldn't tell, I'm something of a fan. I grew up watching the show, I loved it, I was obsessed with it, I hated missing an episode. I've had that poster back there since I was a very little kid, and then more recently I was lucky enough to have it signed by 3 members of the original cast, which is super cool. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. So this is sort of my first drawing that I've done in this program, Clip Studio Paint Pro. I had sort of messed around in the program before, testing out the different tools, trying to get a feel for it, but this is sort of my first finished piece that I created in this program. So there was a bit of a learning curve. You can probably tell the lines that I'm making right now look really pixelated, and that's because I was working in a really low resolution to start. I didn't realize it. I don't know a lot about different resolutions and things of that nature, DPI. I still couldn't tell you what DPI stands for. I'll have to look that up later. But it was brought to my attention that I was working in a really low resolution, and that's going to have a negative impact on how the drawing looks when it's blown up or seen in a large size. And obviously you want your art to look good and not super pixely. So thanks, Chad, for bringing that to my attention. Now you can kind of see that the lines that I'm creating from here on out don't look as pixelated, and that's because I'm working in a higher resolution now. I increased the DPI and the canvas size, and it definitely had a positive effect on the outcome of my drawing. So here I'm doing the line work, the final line work, in another layer. It's just one of the many advantages that come with digital art is the idea of layers. It's like almost like using a light table. I don't have a light table, but it's just sort of you can kind of sketch on one layer and then do the final line work on another layer, and it's great. And another thing that you can do that you'll see me do a lot is I'll draw a line and I'll erase it and try again, and it's just, you get this clean erase, obviously, because you're working with pixels, essentially. You're not working with graphite and paper or ink and paper. So you can try something, and you can try it as many times as you want until you get something that you like. And it almost feels like cheating, but I do think that that's a skill. It's just a different set of skills that you're using when you use a program like this than the types of skills that you use when you're working with traditional media. With programs like these, it's like you're drawing on paper, but you can cut that paper and move it around, and you can erase as much as you want without wearing the paper thin. Like, you can do all kinds of things to your canvas without negatively affecting the canvas. The integrity of the canvas stays intact, if that makes any sense. You can cut and paste it back together as many times as you want, and you still get this clean finished product. Honestly, I think it's great, and I do think that those skills, the skills you use in digital art, I do think that they can be used in other areas of art. Like, I do think, for instance, drawing something and redrawing it and redrawing it until you get it right, hopefully the next time you go to draw that thing, you'll have a better idea of how to draw it. So the fact that you're given that flexibility with digital art, whereas, you know, you kind of have to, I mean, you can erase pencils, There are lots of ways that you can redo things with traditional media as well, but it's a lot less time consuming when you can just hit Control Z and draw it again. And so I think with that flexibility, you're able to try things more times. You can only erase things so many times with pencil, let's say, before you start wearing down the paper, depending on the quality of paper you're working with, But I'm really excited to be getting more practice drawing in programs like these, and I'm excited to see how much I grow, or I'm able to grow as an artist moving forward. So another thing you'll see is the moving, cutting and pasting and moving around, and resizing things too. It's definitely an advantage of working in a program like this. I should say too, probably, that you're watching a sped up version of my drawing. Obviously, I don't draw this fast. I'm hoping that this is not too spastic. The zooms in and out and flipping and moving around. That's another thing too. You can flip the canvas horizontally. Whew. I don't know what happened to my voice there. You can flip the canvas horizontally, vertically. You can rotate it. It makes drawing just that much easier. When obviously it's hard to move like a computer itself. You couldn't just flip the computer upside down to see what your drawing looks like. So the fact that you can do it in this program is super helpful. And I don't know, it's just easier to do curves at certain angles, having your arm at certain angles. So the fact that you can rotate the canvas is super helpful. I want to talk a little bit about Rita as a character and what it was like drawing her. Rita has a really kind of interesting design. I think it's really busy. There's a lot going on, but at the same time, it feels sort of cohesive. And I don't know if that's just because I grew up watching Power Rangers, and so I saw her all the time, and so her design just makes sense to me. But there's a lot of little pieces to her design. And one of the things that was interesting drawing her is I work in this sort of a cartoony style, and it was fun figuring out which parts of her appearance I needed to kind of nail to make sure that she was recognizable, and which parts I could sort of use some creative license with, get more creative and draw them my way, or simplify them in a way that was sort of in keeping with my cartoony style, but still felt like Rita. So I definitely did that with the breastplate. I ended up simplifying that quite a bit. Also the staff, I ended up simplifying that, parts of that. So I was working with some reference photographs that I found online, and the thing is, the cameras that the show was filmed with back then didn't have the best picture quality, so or didn't result in the best picture quality. So a lot of the pictures were I don't know if they just got the files got corrupted when someone posted them online or whatever, but I had to kind of guess at parts of the staff, let's say, but I felt comfortable, just using creative license with parts of her costume. If you want, you can point out what I got wrong, but I feel good about the ways in which I made Rita, sort of made her my own in a way. But I think I stayed pretty true to her design. I'm trying to get better too at coloring my drawings and shading. You'll notice that I'm working with pretty muted colors. I don't know exactly why. I feel I sort of gravitate towards more muted, dull colors. I don't know. I think it might be in part because I think they're easier to work with. I don't know. Maybe it's because, again, I didn't go to art school, and so color theory is kind of beyond me. I don't even know if this would be color theory, but it seems to me that dull colors are a little bit easier to work with because they're all a little bit closer to gray, and so they don't clash quite as much as when you try to work with more saturated colors. But the downside of it is that the figures don't pop quite as much. So someone recommended that I increase the saturation on this drawing and work with more saturated colors. So that is something that I took into consideration, and I did end up increasing the saturation of my drawing in the end. But I don't know if maybe subconsciously I was trying to go for more of an old-timey, like faded look, because it's sort of a throwback to the 90s. Or again, if it was just that I felt that it was easier, or if it was just an aesthetic thing. I don't know if I thought aesthetically it was more pleasing to work with more muted colors, but I definitely am glad that I ended up increasing the saturation. I think I could have gone more saturated with the gold. I could have made that more vibrant, but you'll see what I'm talking about with the finished product. Right now it's still pretty muted. I am not totally happy with how I did the details on the front of her dress. I did a lot of like drawing over and then erasing. I think that was effective in some ways, but also the lines are supposed to, the instrument that I'm using, the lines are sort of randomized a little bit so that the edges, you can kind of tell with the black line work. The edges are a little bumpy. It gives the line a bit of a more organic feel, I think. Like you're working with, I don't know, pencils or ink, and not just, clean pixelated lines. But so when you draw and then erase a lot, you're kind of messing with that because parts of the line are going to be bumpy and parts are going to be more smooth where you erased. So I don't know if that was the best way to do it with the details, and I did it with the shading and the line work as well. I think in the end, when you're sort of zoomed out, it looks okay, and you probably don't notice that as much. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe it's something that I'll get better at as I go. But I also want to improve with shading. I went with pretty simple shading. I do like cell shading, which is kind of what I'm using here. It's sort of the cartoony version of shading that I feel comfortable with, and I also like it. I think it looks cool. But I do want to get better at drawing clothing. I think my line work could have been more intricate, or I could have done more with the clothing and also with the shading to to suggest where the wrinkles are and whatnot. Right now, I kept it pretty simple. That is something that I do want to get better at, though. I think it looks okay. It just looks, you know, I see some artists, the way they do clothing just sort of blows me away. I'm like, that looks like fabric. But it is something that's sort of, it doesn't come naturally to me, so that's something that I need to practice. But I'm pretty happy with how the shading came out for the most part. And also the highlights I'm pretty happy with. Maybe I should have added more highlights on the dress, but I was worried that wouldn't look quite right, so I need to maybe consider doing that in the future. But and I had a lot of problems. It looked like the bottom half of her body was too short, so I had to keep increasing the length of the staff and her dress. That's what I was just drawing that figure as sort of a reference, anatomical reference. But I decided to give her like a space background, because she was trapped in a dumpster on the moon, and I believe she also ended up having her base on the moon, but her castle on the moon. Anyway, that's why I went with the space background. This is the finished piece. Like I said, I increased the saturation, so that's why it looks a little bit more, it pops off the screen a little bit more, I think. I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. Hey, thanks for watching, if you did watch. Was this interesting? I hope this was interesting and not super boring. I thought about picking just kind of a random topic to talk about during the video, but I wanted to keep it related to the drawing that I was making, and I also want this channel to be more about art and my drawings than about me and my life. But if you'd rather hear me talk about something else, let me know. Would you rather I didn't talk at all? That's also an option. I don't know. I don't know what to do during these types of videos. I do want to do more speed paints, but this was the first one I've ever made, so I don't know. I don't know what to talk about. So let me know in a comment below, or you can reach me on Twitter at @VidAlliger. I'm also on Instagram and a couple other places. I'll leave some links down below to where you can find me online. And yeah, I think that's it. See you later.